Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about what is it that I do when people give me a high praise. Um, for me, when people compliment me, especially when they compliment me about, for example, people would come up to me and was like, "Wow, you have quite the brain," because they read something that I had written, or they come across my content, such as my YouTube videos, and they hear what it is that I have to say, and people, oftentimes tend to approach me, both in person and also online, and share, like, "Hey, you have quite the brain," or, "Hey, you are very wise for your age," or, "Hey, what it is that you're doing. I think it's amazing. You're an inspiration," and things like that. And when people give me high praise, I am very mindful about who it's coming from, meaning when it's people close within my inner circle, I hear it, but I don't listen to it, if that makes sense. And what I mean by hearing it is when I hear it, I'm like, I appreciate it. I rarely ever say thank you whenever more so like family compliments me about something I'm doing, or something I released, or something I'm working on, or whatever. And and I oftentimes say I appreciate it rather than thank you. And the reason being is because I feel like when I say I appreciate it, I'm acknowledging that you are giving me this compliment, but I'm not absorbing that compliment. I don't know how much to really explain that thought process of mine, but pretty much, for example, I was out of state. I was having dinner with my aunts, and one of my aunts had came across a video I had released. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was a video that was a little bit of me being more vulnerable, and a little bit emotional within the video. And she was just, complimenting me about what it was that I had shared, and what it was that I talked about within the video. And I I kept it short, and I kept it simple. And I didn't make it awkward, but I kept it short and simple. Like, I appreciate it. It really does mean a lot, because it does. But I try not so much to focus on saying thank you, because I feel like I'm going to absorb it, and I'm going to get big headed. I don't want to get big headed. And I try as much as possible not to get big headed, or I try as much as possible to acknowledge that you are complimenting me, but where it's not awkward, right? But I also try my absolute best not to let it get to my head, because um yeah, I just don't want to be that individual. I don't want to be arrogant, or I don't want it to become a habit. Like, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you," and then eventually becomes a habit, or eventually you get big headed, and eventually down the line you become arrogant. And that's not who I want to be. I want to remain true to who I am, which is like extremely humble, and just focus on continuously setting the bar higher and higher for myself. And also, too, I want to mention is how earlier in the beginning of the video, I talked about when people get high praise, I'm very mindful about who it comes from. For example, if it comes from family, I hear it, but I don't listen too much. I hear it, but I don't listen to it as much. Again, meaning I don't absorb that compliment when it comes to family. But when it comes to like a certain group if it comes like from a certain individual, for example, like um, his name is Nick. I forgot his last name, but anyhow, he has a disability as well, and he's a very high profile public figure. And he commented on one of my Instagram posts like months ago, a while back. And during what he said, he was just, he resonated with what it was that I had to share, and that was like a big deal for me. The reason why is because, one, they're not in my inner circle. Two, they can resonate, because they too have a disability. But it comes from, I don't want to say someone, just because they're a public figure. It's just there's someone outside of my circle. And when someone from outside of your circle, it feels good to hear someone compliment your work, compliment your craft, compared to those within your circle. And I am trying to figure out how I can word that in the best way possible. Yes, let me rephrase that. When it comes to my inner circle, of course it's going to mean more, right? But I try not to let myself absorb those compliments because it's in my circle, because it's within my inner circle. And, I try to become mindful um, with that. And trying to figure out how I can word that better, much more better. But for me to keep everything simple and short within this video is I'm very mindful with who and what I give thanks to, who and what I say thank you to, and who and what the information that I absorb. I'm very mindful of the information that I absorb, especially with the compliments from who, because you don't want to become big headed. And I learned this from Patrick Bet David, who is a serial entrepreneur, and he talked about how he is very mindful when it comes to receiving high praise, because he's a big guy in the entrepreneurial world. He's a very wealthy man, and as he was talking, he says what happened is he said he started to become mindful when people would compliment him, because every time he would come home, like his family would always compliment him, like, oh my, like, you're amazing, or you're doing great, and they would always give him high praise for everything that he was doing. And he says after a while hearing that, you become big headed. And he says once he started coming home, he started to find himself he started to see a shift within his mood in a negative way, in a negative behavior. And he took notice of it, he was mindful of it, and he corrected it. And the thing that he shared is become mindful with those that you receive compliments from. He says when it comes to his family, he's like, I appreciate it. He doesn't absorb it as much compared to when he is in the office. That's when he absorbs information, like, yeah, because when he's in the office, he absorbs it a little bit differently than he does at home, because it's a more like a team effort, and you guys kind of like build each other up, and it's all like a one team kind of ordeal. But yeah, but he pretty much just said, become mindful. He found himself, coming home, and he eventually got big headed. It started to shift his behavior. And as I was watching that, it enlightened me, because although like the achievements that I have now, when I reflect on them, they can be viewed as significant. But for me, I'm just constantly setting the bar higher and higher and higher for myself, where it's like nothing to me. And I'm mindful of that. One, it keeps me to achieving more. It keeps me wanting to achieve more. And there's a much bigger purpose behind that. But it keeps me grounded and humbled as well, because I don't view them as something so significant. And also, something I want to mention in this video as well is when you don't count your wins, when you don't hear the applause, you cannot hear the boos. I like that. Um, I like that saying better. When you're mindful, when you don't hear the applause, you also do not hear the boos. Meaning, when you do not let your failures, when you do not focus so much on your failures, you allow yourself the chance of opportunity to not allow your successes to affect you just as much. Meaning, how you view one thing is how you view the other. That was a bit interesting at the end, but I feel like, I don't know. I like the ending, but it's not the greatest thing. But pretty much what I'm trying to say is, if the way you focus on one thing is the way you are going to draw attention for the other. So, for example, if you focus, I'm gonna just end it. I'm gonna just end it there before I lose you guys even much more, because I'm beginning to lose myself in this one. If you don't hear the boos, you also do not hear the applause. and vice versa. If you do not hear the applause, you also do not hear the boos, meaning continue to focus on what it is you're doing, continue to focus on your craft, continue to build, continue to do what you do best, which is show up for yourself, continue to put one foot in front of the other, and continue to keep the faith within the process, because it is faith that ultimately will help you and pull you through every single thing that you may think you cannot get through. I like that ending a lot better. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And remember, grow through what you go through. Much love.